Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We're going to have a little shorter call today. I have a call in Iraq scheduled for 12:30 our time. Correction, I didn't schedule it. It was scheduled for me. I have an individual in Iraq, actually related to me, did 2 tours in Iraq and now is head of security for one of the contractors that's in Iraq. So I wanted to speak with him about what's actually going on the ground there in the streets. And he gave me this time of 12:30 our time when he's available. So, obviously I'm going to accommodate whatever works for him. So I want to get to that call by 12:30, and I want the line clear. But I do want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other pre-valued currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we want to share with you the information we believe to be relevant. Despite the chaos in Iraq, I still think the window for the revaluation exists as we speak, and I'm going to get into that. As I said, Iraq is rather chaotic right now. First, the parliament was not successful in forming a new government. That's not surprising. The protests that were instituted by the Sadrists actually is a little bit surprising, but I want to get into that a little bit. First, let me back up and say that in my opinion, the problem in Iraq for the last year, or at least since the elections of last October, fall at the feet of the coalition framework. Now, the coalition framework is a loose coalition of the Shias, ranging from the moderate Shia to the very radical pro-Iranian Shia. And this group wants Iraq and all of its wealth to remain basically the stepchild of Iran. And unfortunately, in the Biden administration's cozying up to Iran of late has not helped the situation. If anything, it's only emboldened Iranians and the pro-Iranian people in Iraq to step up the problems in Iraq. There's a strategy here. It's very similar to what's going on in this country. As a matter of fact, I could do a whole call on just the parallels between what's going on in Iraq and what's going on in the United States. But the coalition framework strategy is to continue to obstruct politically with the hope of inciting violence, which violence they can then just blame on the other side. That's kind of what's going on. Now, we do know that there was violence in the street. Protests became violent. The protests were initiated by the Sadrists. The violence, in my opinion, was instigated intentionally and premeditatedly by members of the coalition framework. However, this is not what Sadr wants. Sadr went on a food strike, and he's demanded, along with Kazemi, frankly, that people stand down, leave the streets, and my understanding is that's what's occurred, although I'm going to try to get more detailed information about that on my call in a few minutes. But again, it seems as the only weapon left to the coalition framework is chaos, so that in a backhanded way is kind of a good sign. I want to talk about what the options are now, because our concern, of course, is the reinstitution of the dinar, but that's not a primary concern of people within the country. So let's talk about what our options are, because from our perspective, they're actually good. There are, in my opinion, only 2 options. One option is that the Parliament will continue to operate extra-constitutionally and dysfunctionally, or the Parliament will be dissolved. In either case, in my opinion, the caretaker government will remain in power, and the courts have already, with a wink and a nod, basically said that the caretaker government has had granted to them emergency powers. Now, what could those emergency powers include? They could include overseeing the full implementation of the emergency food security law, implementation of the white paper reforms, continue to pursue corrupt officials within the government, and all of the currency reforms, which includes the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar. And again, who does constitute the caretaker government? It's Kazemi as prime minister, Salih as president of the republic, Al-Habussi is the speaker of the House, and Mustafa Galeb is governor of the CBI. Now, this is not a pickup squad. This is the varsity. These are the right people. These are the people that need to be in these positions in order for the reinstitution to occur. So, despite the chaos, despite the unfortunate violence, you can look at it another way, which is what's going on is basically the last gasp of the coalition framework in hopes to stop what's happening, because they're going to lose Iraq as their little playground. And, of course, with the reinstitution and revaluation of their currency, then Iraq can aggressively pursue agreements with other nations and not needing Iran at all. As a matter of fact, the wealth in Iraq dwarfs that of Iran. So Iraq could just take off. They could, through their reinstitution of their currency and revaluation globally, then they could enter into all kinds of contracts for their water system, to rebuild their electrical grid, their road system. Imports and exports would take off. All of the things that need to get done could get done. So this is why, despite the chaos, I really feel as though the dinar could reinstitute at any time. Again, what I wanted to suggest is for our newer callers, please go to our call of August 17th. That call is a full call. It gets into the detailed explanation of the turnkey program we put in place to assist you both pre- and post-RV. And at that point, if you want to contact us to get our initial no-obligation package, the information is included there. Now, before we sign off, I do want to talk a little bit about what's going on in this country. I've alluded to it a couple of times, but it does have a direct bearing on why individuals, whether they have currencies or not, should establish our trust product. And I want to talk about the digital currency that's beginning to be implemented in this country. Pursuant to Executive Order 14067, this was an executive order signed by Joe Biden to be effective December 13th of this year. The Biden administration has announced our beginning transition to a national digital currency, a currency which they say will be both safe and liquid. Now, that there's no other way to respond to this. That is an absolute lie. There's no other way to address that. We are being lied to, right to our faces. And it's not the first time they've lied to us. A digital currency is not safe for a number of reasons. We've witnessed a number of hacks of government agencies and the release of classified information. So the government is incapable of providing the safety and the privacy that we're entitled to. In addition, if there is any future wars, whether they're regional wars or world wars, the first shot fired will be something called an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon. What does that do? Shuts down all technology, shuts down all communications. puts us 150 years back into history, which we are ill-equipped to deal with. But one of the things that we will lose with an EMP is our digital currency holdings. It'll all be wiped out. Because unlike a hard currency that you physically can hold in your hand, a digital currency can only be dealt with in two ways. It is either within the Treasury Department wallet, or it can be exchanged for a good or service. Again, you can't put it in your pocket. You can't do anything with it without the knowledge and consent of the Treasury Department. This would also allow future governments to freeze or confiscate your digital currency, either because they disapprove or disallow of a certain purchase, despite the fact that that purchase might be legal, or because you have certain publicly held views that they oppose. Now, if you doubt me about this, I suggest you Google China's social credit score system, because that's exactly how it works. The currency is what you need to exchange for the goods and services which you need to live. So control of your currency is absolute control of you. Now, there are things we can do to mitigate against this, and this is why we've established these trusts. The federal government, like private entities, cannot, despite their attempts, cannot deny you due process. When your assets are in trust versus being held directly in title, they're going to have to go to a court and show due cause to pierce that trust. It's a lot more difficult for them. Another example would be the increased size of the IRS and the hiring of 87,000 agents. Now, these agents are going to go out there and they're going to start auditing individuals, middle-class individuals. Now, when those agents have a choice of auditing a sole proprietorship, for example, or just an individual, that's a lot easier than doing an audit of someone that has a very sophisticated trust such as ours with assets that are protected under trust law. In addition, once the revaluation has occurred, one of the other things we can explore is setting up offshore entities and utilizing the trust really as the catalyst within the country. So you operate within the trust domestically, and you can also have assets outside of the country. You might even have regional other multiple currency accounts established to avoid countries that are utilizing entirely a digital currency. So there are a lot of reasons why you want to utilize this trust. For those of you that have not established a trust and have currencies, again, I strongly suggest you go to our call of August 17th to learn about that. And we will touch on that call why those of you that have any wealth at all and want to protect it should establish this trust package, even if you are not the holder of some of these currencies. Now, I will be going to, I'm walking around right now because I wanted to find some additional information that I neglected to grab. Let me see if I can find it. I had something else I wanted to share with you, and in the chaos today, I was unable to locate it, but I'm going to try real quick before we, I can't find it. I'm sorry for that. Again, I strongly suggest you go to trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. That's our website, and you can get a lot of information about us, our trusts, about the revaluation of these currencies on that website. If you want to request our no obligation initial package, you can go to trusts with an S, unlimitedllc at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimitedllc at gmail.com. I believe our phone service is 307-407-4122. I believe that's the number, but you can check our website for that number if you wish to call our phone service. That's our call for today. I'm sorry I don't have more information for you. I tried to get through to Iraq to learn more about exactly what's going on. I was unable to do so. So I went through my routine contacts to provide what little information I was able to glean for today. But in closing, I'm of the opinion that whether the a parliament in Iraq is dissolved or not, because they are extra-constitutional and operating dysfunctionally right now, I believe the caretaker government is in a strong position to proceed with everything that needs to be done. So I would not be surprised if we see the reinstitution of the dinar very shortly. And I will mention this, and I said this on my last call. If you go back over 100 years, you see that the major reinstitution of currencies in the last 100 years have occurred in either January, April, or September. So hopefully that's a good sign that we're moving in the right direction, and we can wrap this thing up sooner rather than later. Thanks so much for listening to the call, everyone. Have a great day. We'll be back next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.